Come on, Annie. Let's go to the movies.
This is the Cinereelists episode 569. My name is Kyle.
My name is James.
And we're here to talk about movies, movie lists, and movie obsession for the next hour or so. Happy Valentine's Day, James.
It's not Valentine's Day.
Well, it is very soon. And I feel like the holiday is appropriate for this week's topics, this week's movies.
Oh, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I'm on board. It's Valentine's Day.
Love is in the air here at Cinereelists headquarters.
Sure. If you say so.
Just two bros bonding over romcoms.
For sure. This is not our typical genres, I would say. I mean, occasionally we'll dip into like a rom-com or something like that, but rarely do we do a double header of two recently released romantic comedies.
Yeah, usually we'll do maybe one. Definitely
Right.
not two back to back.
Speaking of rom-coms, I need to remind everybody that there's a video version of this podcast on YouTube. Go to YouTube, search the word Cinereelists, REEL with an S on the end. Find us there and subscribe, and you can listen while you watch. You could also find us on Patreon at patreon.com/Cinereelists. If you support the podcast there, you'll get extra after show audio amongst other Cinerealist swag. You could also leave us an Apple podcast review. If you have an iPhone, just go to your podcast app, scroll down to the bottom on the Cinerealist show page and click leave a review or whatever the button says, and leave us a review, 5 stars only. And if you leave a little bit of text, then we'll probably talk about it on the podcast. Also, finally, you could leave us a listener email, or send us one rather, to heyguys@cinereelist.com. Send a comment, a question, a list suggestion, a movie suggestion, any of those kinds of things via email. We appreciate getting those, and we'll discuss it on the show. Kyle, I heard a rumor that you have a check-in this week.
Who told you that?
You did, right before we hit record.
How untrustworthy am I? I do have a check-in this week.
All right.
This is actually related to one of my movie resolutions. And I thought instead of waiting an entire year to discuss these resolutions, I could kind of sprinkle them throughout the year because they are movie watch habit resolutions.
Mm-hmm.
So one of my resolutions, one of the challenges from you, was to rewatch Spider-Man 3, the third Sam Raimi, Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie, and see if I like it more than the 2 stars I gave it on Letterboxd. Because I think, as your words were, there's more to it than you think, or you may find something you like.
I said there's more to it than you think. That doesn't sound like something I said.
It's
The second one I think I said, but I don't think there's more to it than you think.
I think it was maybe the second one, but it was definitely of more of those. It was, your take was, it's a better movie than you think it is, or something along those lines.
Yeah.
So
that being said, I don't think I've ever said Spider-Man 3 is good.
Okay.
It's just people, I think, unnecessarily hate on it, when in reality it's just an average movie. It's like not good, not bad. It's, coming off the high of Spider-Man 2. It was never going to live up to that, nor did it.
I agree with you on that completely. We are in agreement there. So I did rewatch all 3 of the Sam Raimi, Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies.
Okay.
It had been nearly 20 years since I'd watched that trilogy.
Oh, wow.
I think I'd seen Spider-Man 3 once when it came out in theaters and was like, I'm good on that one.
Mm-hmm.
So it was.
And then you rated it on Letterboxd like 10 years later.
Yeah, something like that. Yes.
And gave it a 2.
And gave it a 2. Correct. Yeah.
All right.
So I won't talk too much about the first 2, but watching those again, it's amazing how small those stories are.
Sure. Compared to what comic book movies are today.
Correct. But I think that's a positive thing. Like, I think one of the joys of the Spider-Man character is he is the neighborhood Spider-Man. Right? He's not saving the world. He's saving his neighborhood, or saving New York City in this case. And so much of it is about him being this nerdy kid, or eventually nerdy young adult, and how he wrestles with the identity of being both Peter Parker, this nerdy kid who has, relationship issues and friendship issues and kind of the normal hangups that kids and teenagers have, versus being a superhero who's saving the city from weird villains.
Right.
And Spider-Man 1 and 2 play those themes so well. Spider-Man 2 is almost a drama. Like, I would say there's more non-Spider-Man scenes in that movie than there are Spider-Man scenes.
Sure.
Of him talking to his friends, having these problems, right? Like Doc Ock is the bad guy, who's a great bad guy, but he's kind of gone for good chunks of those movies, of that movie. So it was a lot of fun to rewatch the first two and see how well Raimi and Maguire and the whole cast handled the Spider-Man character and the conflicts that he feels. And number 3 tries to do that, right? It sets up the issue with Harry becoming, they call him New Goblin, learning about Peter Parker and being Spider-Man, his relationship with, or his involvement in his death, and his relationship with Mary Jane Watson. And they bring in Gwen Stacy, who's obviously, probably the second most popular Spider-Man love interest. But for me, it doesn't quite keep it together. And this is a common criticism that even watching, and I agree with, it's overstuffed. There's too much going on.
Absolutely.
Right.
Like Sandman should not be in that movie.
Right. Yes. Sandman doesn't play an interesting role. I forgot that they retconned Sandman to be the guy who murdered Ben, which is totally unnecessary to that story. Sure. Like it's Peter has enough guilt about, I let this guy go, and that was enough formation for his character. Now be like, oh wait, but here's the real killer. It's kind of like in Batman when they have the Joker kill his parents, the 1989 Batman. Right? It's not necessary to have some big bad be the reason why you're the way you are in these movies. It can just be something that happens. Yeah, so Sandman doesn't play an interesting role. I think Hobgoblin is, or whatever he's supposed to be, Harry Osborn, he's very interesting, but they give him amnesia immediately in that movie, just to kind of get him out of the way until the very end. And that's kind of odd. I also hated his snowboard glider.
Sure, compared to the traditional glider.
Well, it just felt very X Games. Like he's like this new, cooler, he rides a snowboard instead of a glider.
It was 2007 or something.
Yeah, it ages the movie poorly.
Sure.
Right. I get why they did it. Venom gets kind of interesting towards the end. Venom's odd. The scene everyone talks about where Peter Parker is like, he's influenced by Venom and he's walking down the street doing finger guns at people. It's not as cringy as I remember.
Right.
So I will give that. I'm like, okay, this isn't as bad as I remember it being. Like in my mind, it was set to like Staying Alive, and he's like strutting, and it's not quite that bad. It's still not great. I also think
too that like in the moment, a bunch of people saw Spider-Man 1 and Spider-Man 2 and loved it. And then they saw Spider-Man 3, and there's a couple things in Spider-Man 3, like the dancing to Stay Alive and the emo Toby and stuff like that.
Yeah, the bangs. Yeah.
That is Sam Raimi. You know what I mean? And I don't think people realized they were watching Sam Raimi movies when the first two came out. You know what I mean? Like he held back in those movies compared to what I know Sam Raimi can do on screen, which is be weird. And those two moments are weird.
But I don't think they work, though. It didn't work for me. Like,
sure.
Evil Peter Parker. Let's call him the evil Peter Parker. Right? Like, I get that I was watching a Sam Raimi movie and that Sam Raimi is not, Ron Howard, right?
Sure.
Like, I totally get that. And you see that in like Spider-Man 2 with the Doc Ock surgery scene. Like that's straight up horror. There's like people like being dragged across the floor with like scratching the ground and everything. I thought that scene had more blood in it. My memory was that that was like a hard PG-13 scene with like blood splatters. There's no blood in that Doc Ock surgery scene whatsoever, but it's done so well that I thought there was like more.
Yeah, it's
gore
mostly
happening.
shadows on the wall. Really.
Exactly, or like close-ups of doctors screaming.
Mhm.
Anyway, so I think that's just how effective that moment was. It was I remembered it being worse than it actually was.
Mhm.
So yeah, and then another thing that Sam Raimi did well, I thought, was that last Venom fight. At times he kind of has this thing going on. It's all CG, but it reminded me of the Thing, the John Carpenter movie, like when Venom's all morphing.
Mhm.
So yeah, the movie for me just was, it's disjointed. I thought the first Hobgoblin fight scene is nearly unwatchable. Just how the camera is like constantly swooping and following them around, and it's cutting from like close-ups of their faces to like faraway shots of CG rubber characters.
Mhm.
I thought that was unwatchable. The first Spider-Man fight was Sandman in like the sewers. That was nearly unwatchable. The Venom fight was good. I thought that one was watchable. So I don't know. I think after, in the context of the first two, and after taking the whole thing in, I still didn't enjoy the movie, and I stand by my 2 stars.
Mm. But the scene that everybody hates that movie for, you don't think is as bad as you remembered.
That is a mea culpa on my part. It's not as bad as I remember. I think it's definitely played up in pop culture. Even Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse makes a reference to like that scene of,
Mhm.
oh, we don't talk about that.
Sure.
Yeah. I thought what was worse was the scene in the bar when he's on the date with Gwen Stacy, and he's
Mhm.
also trying to, and then Mary Jane is singing on stage,
Oh yeah,
and
and
he's trying to make her
dancing around.
jealous.
Sure.
Yeah. I think
I
that
lo-
was
I-
more cringy than the finger guns down the street.
You hate all the parts I like.
That's that is, I think you're in the minority on this one. I think most people do not like emo Spider-Man in that movie.
I mean, yeah. We watched the first 2 Evil Dead movies. Watched all of the
I've seen
Evil
all
Dead
3.
movies.
Yeah.
Watch Drag Me to Hell, and then watch Spider-Man 3, and you'll be like, this makes total sense.
I will say number 3 had my favorite Bruce Campbell cameo of the 3 of them.
Mhm.
He's the French Maitre D,
Sure.
and he keeps like calling out and calling away the champagne for the engagement scene. I thought that was great. So
Yeah.
of all the Bruce Campbell cameos, number 3 had my favorite.
All right. Fair enough. Well, you completed 1/3 of that task. Didn't I give you 3 movies or 2?
You gave me 3, and Zach also
Right.
gave me 3. So I'm 1/6 of the way through half of my New Year's my movie resolutions.
And you did the easiest one first, in my opinion.
Oh, for sure. It was. I mean, it was the one where it gave me excuse to rewatch 2 movies that I like. So
What's the hardest one? You, me, and everybody we know?
yeah, you and me and everyone we know. I really do not like that movie, and I'm not looking forward to rewatching that one.
There's no Spider-Man 1 and 2 to watch before it.
No, and the last thing I need to watch is more. I can't even know what is her name. That director. She also did the Kid Jillionaire, or whatever it's called.
Sure. I know. Miranda July.
Miranda July. Thank you. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to that whatsoever. But it's only 90 minutes, and I went into Spider-Man 3 with an open mind and found things I liked, and things that I remembered being bad, not as bad. So maybe the same thing will happen with you and me and everyone we know.
Maybe. We'll see.
We'll see.
Awesome. Good check-in, Kyle.
Thank you.
What you're doing right now, I don't think I'll ever do.
Reassess movies?
I mean, the movies that I dislike, I'm pretty sure I will always dislike, because it takes a lot for me to actively dislike something. So, yeah.
I think it's harder. I'm going to go back to the you and me. It's harder to rewatch that one because I've seen that in the last like 5 years. So like that Letterboxd rating is based on in the moment, whereas a lot of the other ones that you guys gave me were movies that I saw 20 years ago and remember not liking and gave a low rating. And
when you were like mass rating things on Letterboxd.
Exactly. So
gotcha.
Like I can tell you very clearly why I don't like that one. I can't tell you as clearly why I don't like Moulin Rouge. I just remember not liking it. So yeah.
Well, let's see how well you liked some Netflix movies. that we watched this week.
The transitions this week, James, on point.
Perfect. We watched 2 Netflix movies, as we mentioned earlier. They are romantic comedies. They're also both relatively recent releases. The first that we're going to discuss was actually just released this past weekend. The name of the movie is Your Place or Mine. We're going to get into it right after this clip.
Hey, Debbie.
Happy birthday, Peter. 20 years of friendship. Can you believe it?
How do you still speak to me?
Do you remember the first night we met?
Never stops being weird.
So weird.
Debbie, you need to take a break.
I just need to be practical, which is what you have to be when you're a single mom. Right. Tragic.
That was Your Place or Mine, a 2023 American romantic comedy directed by Aline Brosh McKenna and starring Reese Witherspoon, Ashton Kutcher, Jesse Williams, Zoe Chow, Wesley Kimmel, Tig Notaro, and Steve Zahn, amongst others. The official IMDb plot synopsis for Your Place is Mine is: 2 long-distance best friends change each other's lives when she decides to pursue a lifelong dream, and he volunteers to keep an eye on her teenage son. Kyle, what did you think of Your Place or Mine? And maybe before you give an opinion on what you thought of it, why did you agree to watch this?
I agreed to watch this because Reese Witherspoon is in it.
Okay.
And I am a Reese Witherspoon fan, and especially in college, had quite a big celebrity crush on her.
Nice.
Yeah.
I think we all kind of had a crush on Reese Witherspoon. That's like baked into her personality.
Right. Yeah. She's just so approachable, at least in her public persona on camera.
I mean, she took a string of roles back then that made her very personable, I would say, seeming.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Her characters, anyway.
For me, it goes back to that, what's that Marky Mark one? Fear or whatever it's called? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, she like did Fear and Cruel Intentions and Election and Legally Blonde.
Mm-hmm.
Like just all in a row. And she kind of played similar characters in all of those movies.
Home Sweet Alabama.
Yeah, Sweet Home Alabama. Yep. Yeah, I would say Walk the Line was kind of her prestige departure.
Before we decided to make this week a doubleheader, we had bandied about the idea of doing like a Reese Witherspoon top 10, which I do want to do someday.
Yes, for sure.
And this week in preparation, I got a rewatch of both Legally Blonde movies in, and it was a good time. It was awesome.
How do those? I remember liking. Well, I saw the first one. I don't think I ever saw the second one. I remember liking the first one though.
Oh, if you like the first one, you should definitely see the second one. The second one is more of the same, but with political jokes in it, because she goes to Washington, D.C. to get a bill passed. She's become a lawyer, and so now she goes to Washington, D.C. to get a bill passed. And it's good. The wild thing with rewatching those movies today is just how different people dress. I would say when you watch it, I mean, that is a movie that's firmly planted in the time it was made as far as like the fashion of people walking around. It's pretty wild.
And Your Place or Mine makes that joke at the very beginning where it starts off in 2003.
It does.
And then points out like, here's how you tell 2003 and all like the fashion choices that were being made at the time.
Yeah, what did you think of that? There's like it happens twice, right at the beginning during the credits, and then again right before the end credits.
So I kind of like that because at first I was like, "Oh, okay, this is gonna be like a self-referential pop-up video style rom-com."
Mm-hmm.
Right? I thought that's how it's gonna be different, and then it drops that conceit for the whole movie, right? Except for the very end. Then it has like the scribbles on the screen again, like someone's writing in Sharpie and pointing things out. And I don't know, I think that would have made it a more interesting and more, stand out rom-com if it kind of kept that going throughout. It could have been annoying, but it would at least have been interesting.
I totally agree. I mean, the way the movie exists right now, it's pretty standard rom-com,
Right.
and they showed a sign of innovation there, or
Yeah.
like some style that you maybe weren't expecting when you hit play, and then it immediately goes away, not to be seen from until the very end when they remind you what could have been.
Right. Yes. So I like that word innovation. It could have been a little innovative to include this meta commentary throughout
just a
the movie.
little,
right?
Not a huge innovation, just
yeah,
a little different than your standard rom-com.
But you're right. It kind of becomes a standard rom-com, and I would say it's not very calm. Like Ashton Kutcher, who is probably the more comedic one of the two.
Mm-hmm.
Not that Reese Witherspoon can't do comedy, but I would, he's probably has more roots in comedy. He's not doing a ton with the comedy. And yeah.
I mean, I would say that both of them, like this movie's kind of in 50-50 mode. You know, that movie with Seth Rogen and
yes.
Where
JGL.
It's like, it's a comedy and occasionally people are telling jokes. And certainly this movie is not as dark as 50-50. Like just the subject matter makes 50-50 way more intense than this certainly is. But they both are like, they're kind of normal people that just have quirks. And that's where the occasionally humorous things come from.
Yeah, there's, I can't remember like any one scene of like, oh, that's your laugh out loud, or you're not gross out, but like that's your moment of, if you're gonna find one thing hilarious, wait for that scene to happen.
Right.
Maybe you differ.
I will tell you that Zoe Chow and Tig Notaro cracked me up in this movie, but they are supporting characters that are not in every scene.
Yeah.
The two leads, Reese Witherspoon and Ashton Kutcher, are not particularly funny in this movie. I don't feel like they're trying very hard, so it's not like it's cringy. It's not like they're trying to be funny and failing. It's just they're reading the script probably as it was written, and they're both fairly charming, and so they're getting away with it. And other people occasionally come into scenes and crack jokes and have like heightened characters, and it worked fine. It wasn't consistent enough for me to be like, this is a great movie or anything. But if you wanted to sit on the couch on a Thursday night and watch something, this is not going to offend you.
No, Megan and I popped some popcorn, watched the movie on the couch under 2 hours. Like I was not mad that I watched it. We were entertained. I did think, and this is kind of a fault of the conceit, is you have these two charming people who I'm sure have chemistry, Reese Witherspoon and Ashton Kutcher, and they're never in scenes together because they're in opposite sides of the country throughout the entire movie.
Yeah, just the way the script is written, you end up with them separated. I mean, I don't even think they're in the same state until right at the end.
They at the very beginning and the very end, they have scenes together. And
at the very
everything else.
They do? Oh, well, you mean in the flashback?
No, when he shows up in California, right?
Right, but is he there when she's leaving, or do they show a scene? Oh, okay.
I don't remember. I guess the point is they have so little screen time together. All their chemistry is through like FaceTime and phone calls.
Mm-hmm.
And it was fine, but it would have been nice to see if these two people are supposed to be, not long time lovers. If they're supposed to have this unrequited love relationship between them, this friendship that's gone on for 20 years that really has this simmering love underneath it, it'd be nice to see that chemistry actually happening in person.
Yeah, and there's definitely a lot of telling us that this exists, this chemistry, this tension exists. But whenever they're on the phone or on FaceTime together, I'm not sure it fully came through.
Yeah. It's like you more learn about that tension because of what they haven't told each other.
Yeah. This is a little spoilery, so if you want to not hear a spoiler, maybe just fast forward like a couple minutes. It's not a big deal if you hear this though, because it's not definitely not what the movie hinges on. But I really wanted her to get with the publisher guy. The publisher guy totally seemed into her
Yep.
You know what I mean? Into her personality. He's probably a guy who could get any woman he wants, for the most part, in New York City, where there's a big pool. And here she is, an quote unquote editor who doesn't really have a record or like a reputation, or she's not famous in any way, shape, or form. And he likes her for her, as best we can tell. And also doesn't come with all this other weirdness, and was totally sweet to her. And then I get it. The movie's about Ashton Kutcher and Reese Witherspoon, or their characters rather. And, it's kind of inevitable for them to get back or get together at the end. But it just kind of felt like you could have complicated that more. You could have had like, I don't know, maybe it's too dark, but she goes with him. He goes off sulking, and then they come together in their 70s after her husband passes away or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it just felt like if you wanted to turn this into a little more of a drama with some meat on the bones, there was more to farm there than like she's into him, he's into her. I'm talking about the publisher in New York.
Right. Yeah.
And the moment the guy from the past shows a more than a friendship interest, she immediately drops the guy in New York and is out.
Yes.
And it just kind of was like, I don't know. I don't think it works that way personally. I don't have a lot of experience, being a female in New York, being courted by a book editor or a book publisher, but it just didn't feel wise, right? I don't know.
In the little experience I have as a female in New York of the Gen X generation, I agree. Like he was definitely the foil, the tension to this of like, who will she end up with? And right, the minute she realizes that Ashton Kutcher, her friend of 20 years, has feelings for her, which I guess she has feelings for him too. It's like she's out. She's like, I can't do this, and runs back to him. So that actor who played the publisher, I don't know his name, but throughout the whole movie, Megan was like, he is so dreamy.
Jesse Williams.
Is that Jesse Williams?
Yeah, he was on Grey's Anatomy.
He was on Grey's, for a long
decade.
time. And I was like, really? You find him attractive? She's like, yes. I just don't see it.
You think he's unattractive?
I don't think he's unattractive. Like, I mean, yeah, he's got his blue eyes are pretty intense and pretty great. I'll give him that.
Right.
I don't think he's an unattractive guy. But like Megan was just like, oh my God, Jesse Williams. So attractive.
He's got really good cheekbones. Nice hair. What's wrong with you, Kyle? You should totally be into this dude.
No, I'm not saying he's ugly or anything like that. I'm not like, it's not like Clint Howard. You think he's attractive, but sorry, Clint. That was mean.
The other thing that really cemented this, besides the actors in the movie, the other thing that cemented this to like a time period for me was Steve Zahn playing like fourth fiddle and being like just a weirdo character that didn't matter for the most part through the entire story. He's just like the weird guy that they walk by over the course of the movie. And that is 100% the types of movies Steve Zahn was in during the entire aughts, basically.
Yeah, he was like the goofy friend all the time.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. And he plays it well, and maybe he's typecast as that now.
I don't know if you ever saw 8-Bit Christmas. He was like the dad in that one. He was kind of the goofy dad. 8-Bit Christmas, the Neil Patrick Harris Christmas movie.
Mm-hmm. We talked about it on the podcast.
I thought so. I thought you had talked about it. Okay, that's a movie that we've watched a couple times in our household now. So
nice. No, but I think by far I liked Tig Notaro best and Chloe Zhao second. I forget, it wasn't good enough to remember, but there's like one line that Chloe Zhao says, like something about how like she's running down all the great things about Reese Witherspoon's character coming to New York. And one of them was like, you made friends with a millennial or something like that.
With a hot millennial.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. There were like multiple moments like that where Chloe Zhao was just allowed to, I think, riff on some level, and it It really worked for me.
Not
And then-
Chloe Zhao.
What did I say? Chloe Zhao? Zoe
Zoe
Chow.
They rhyme. I'll give it
I mean,
to you.
they're pretty close. And Tig is just, she's so deadpan.
Oh,
I mean, I
she's
wish there was
so
more.
dry.
Yeah, I wish there was more of those two characters, but I mean, I'm sure they're paying Reese and Ashton the big bucks, so might as well keep them on screen.
Did you see some of the publicity photos of Reese Witherspoon and Ashton Kutcher
Yes.
for this movie, and how like they're just standing next to each other with like Ashton Kutcher with his hands on by his sides?
Yeah, I mean, I actually watched an interview because a YouTube clip got recommended to me where he's like, "What do you want me to do?" You know what I mean? Like, I'm married. He's like, if I stand next to a woman, everybody publishes things saying that my marriage is in trouble.
Right. Yeah.
Or if I stand next to a woman, I'm disrespecting her, or I'm not giving the project any like promotion because it's obvious there's no chemistry between us. But the moment I put my arm around a lady or stand too close to her, then everybody says I'm being disrespectful to my wife. So he's like, so I'll just err on not being disrespectful.
Right. I'll just
to my
err
wife.
on the awkward posing here.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought it was, I'm not saying, we should white knight Ashton Kutcher or anything, but I thought it was it was interesting that it was thought through. He was like, I'm going to go on this press tour. I'm going to promote the movie, but I don't need to hug on Reese Witherspoon for every photo. You know what I mean? Like, she's not asking for that. Nobody's asking for that. So he didn't do it. And people still had a problem.
Right.
With it.
They still were like, ugh. Like,
Yeah.
why don't you like her? And I think the contrast to that was I was thinking about Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper when they did their Oscars performance.
Yeah, and they were practically making love on stage.
Right. And everyone's like, are they an item? And then Lady Gaga's like, yeah, we're actors.
Right.
Or at least Lady Gaga's like, I know how to put a show on. Like, so
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah. It's a non-controversy for sure.
Oh no, I'm not trying to bring it up as like a controversy. I just thought it was an interesting little story, little button to this whole movie.
Sure. Anything else with Your Place or Mine that we missed? There's not much to the movie, so I'm not sure we missed much.
Yeah, no, not really. It's I'm fine. I'm pretty neutral in this movie. I'm not mad I saw it.
I'm not mad I saw it either, and also I will forget this movie within the week.
Right, yeah.
I will never think about it again unless it's put in front of my eyes.
Maybe if it had more like, Sharpie writing on the screen, I would have thought about, oh yeah, that's the Sharpie rom-com we saw a couple years ago. But
I mean, have you seen Edge of 17?
Oh yeah.
Edge of 17 is good. If you remove the filmmaking behind Edge of 17, though, it's a pretty normal teen story.
Coming of age. Yeah.
It's just somebody made a teen movie and packaged it and got the performances they needed for it to be a normal teen movie story told in a way that's memorable and good.
Yeah.
And with Your Place or Mine, there was the promise of that during the opening credits. And then they very quickly just went, all right, we're going to tell this exactly how you thought we were going to tell it.
Right. Yeah.
So it is what it is. Speaking of which, what is it?
It is 2.5 stars.
All right. That's exactly what I'm going to give it to. I think this is completely average. Not good, not bad. Right down the middle.
Yep. Completely agree.
We'll see if we agree on our next movie. It's another one on Netflix, as mentioned before. This one is titled You People.
It is so nice to meet you guys. What's going on? Tell me about life. How are you? How's work? Talk to me.
Work is fine.
Grinding. I know. I'm in the grind myself.
So do you hang out in the hood all the time, or do you just come up here for our food and women?
It's a valid question.
It is.
You People is a 2023 American romantic comedy. This movie is directed by Kenya Barris and stars Jonah Hill, Lauren London, David Duchovny, Nia Long, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and Eddie Murphy. The official IMDb plot synopsis for You People is: You People follows a new couple and their families who find themselves examining modern love and family dynamics amidst clashing cultures, societal expectations, and generational differences. Wow. That is not a movie I want to watch. I mean, that is the worst, most uninspiring synopsis for a comedy, I think. I mean, they didn't even use the word hilarious anywhere in there. You could have been like, follow the new couple who find themselves hilariously examining. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Sounds like Jonah Hill doing another therapy movie or something on Netflix.
Oh, I missed that one, unfortunately.
You haven't seen the therapy movie?
No, I've not seen the therapy movie.
Did you see he released one? There's a documentary.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it. Supposedly good, but I can't bring myself to find 2 hours to hear Jonah Hill's therapist talk.
Yeah, it's like I'm proud of Jonah Hill I'm good for him for like, hey, here are my issues. I'm gonna get them out there publicly, and therapy and all this is mental health is okay, or mental care is okay. I don't know if I need to see 2 hours of it, but
from what I understand, it's like he went to therapy and then became obsessed with his therapist's life story, which seems like why you don't go to therapy, right? Like when you're sitting there talking in therapy, at least the therapists I've been to over the course of my life, I wasn't there to talk about their life story. I was there to talk about what was going on with me.
Yeah.
Occasionally, they might throw a pretty anonymous anecdote in here and there to like help prove a point or, get my thought moving in one direction. I don't know. It just seems like a weird thing where you go to your therapist and then the next move is let's make a movie about you. Seems like maybe you should see a different therapist.
Right. Like you're going to get entertainment based on their life and not help with your own life.
Or just that like you are thinking about how your therapist should be a movie.
And, at the same time, why is the therapist playing into this? Like, why is the therapist talking about themselves all the time and not recognizing, hey, this is about you, not about me?
Or even like, I don't know the therapist. I haven't seen the movie.
Right. Yeah. I'm judging this based on the premise.
But if I was the therapist and my patient, or whatever you call them in therapy.
Yeah. Patient.
Is like, hey, I want to make a documentary about you. It just seems like you would be like, how about somebody else makes a documentary about you?
Right. Yeah. Maybe not.
Or you're no longer my client and you go see a different therapist for those issues. And then you and I can make a movie together. But it just seems like an inappropriate relationship for a therapist and their patient. Personally.
Maybe they're a bad therapist.
I don't know. I don't know anybody that's seen it, but I know it got good ratings, or the critics liked it. But
yeah.
I'll probably never see it. Anyway, we watched a movie with Jonah Hill in it called You People. And did you go first last time? Who went first last time?
I think it's been a while since I've seen this one. It's been a couple of weeks. So how about you go first?
Okay. It's been a week for me.
Okay.
And I think it stuck with me on some level, even though it's been a week or so. And I generally enjoyed it. I do think, as much as Your Place or Mine feels like just this same pattern, this one also holds some of those patterns, but felt fresher, probably just because of the subject matter and the way people were treating each other. And it's also not a movie based on nostalgia, whereas like the first movie we discussed, Your Place or Mine, was like, these people met 20 years ago and now they're going to constantly refer to 20 years ago. In this movie, It's like, nope, this is 2022, 2023, whatever. And this is the story of an interracial couple getting together and meeting each other's family. And will the relationship survive the family members, basically? And I think the big conceit of the film, maybe not the conceit, but the big question mark is, will you believe Jonah Hill as this person and as dating this other person?
Mm-hmm.
And I did.
Yeah.
I found their interactions charming and interesting. None of it was particularly hilarious or anything, but it was light enough to keep me in a good mood while I watched it. And probably Julia Louis-Dreyfus, at least in the non-dramatic moments, got me laughing the most, just because.
Yeah, I agree. Yes.
Because she does things that I try to avoid as much as possible personally, because I can definitely fall into weird white people traps where I'm like, my weird, like, woke brain or whatever you want to call it, or woke leaning brain
I
will
would just say
occasionally like
aware
start
brain.
feeling good about itself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right. Where I'm just like, oh yeah, I'm doing a great thing here. and then you look back on it a day later and you're like, I absolutely did that for myself, not because it was the right thing to do, or you know what I mean, or that I actually believed what I was saying. I was saying it because I wanted to feel good about myself, type of thing. And I think people who are somewhat self-aware, or at least have self-aware moments, yeah, it's super easy to think that way. So anyway, bottom line is, I related the most to the Julia Louis-Dreyfus character as far as the politics of the movie, and it was interesting to see them attempt something like this with somewhat touchy subject matter.
Mm-hmm.
Not super touchy, but somewhat. And kind of reminded me of Get Out. In that Get Out could touch these topics too. Get Out does a much better job using a totally different genre to get its points across. But this one did it as well. And not near as effective, or trying to be. But I enjoyed my time with it. What did you think about it broadly?
Yeah, broadly, I thought it had its funny moments. I agree with you that is it Julia Louis-Dreyfus?
Julia Louis-Dreyfus.
Thank you. That Julia Louis-Dreyfus, her character had the funniest moments and probably the most cringeworthy moments. Like, there are some great cringeworthy conversations about race and politics throughout this movie, where someone says something, you're like, please don't say that, and they say it with all the best intentions of trying to say, like, oh, look, I'm an ally, this is what I think too, and then it just comes out so not how they mean it to come whatsoever. I do kind of wish the movie had leaned more into some of that, though. Like, it seems to walk up to that level of cringe at times and then kind of backs away a little bit. Like, if you remember, there's the dinner scene with I think we can quickly set up that, is it Lauren London? What was her name?
Yep.
Yeah. So her family are Nation of Islam practicers, with Eddie Murphy being pretty a strong believer. Yeah, pretty staunch right believer. And and same for the mother. And then Jonah Hill's family is Jewish. In a pretty liberal Jewish family. So there's definitely like these conversations between this Jewish family and this Nation of Islam family getting together, and like, for example, there's this whole talk about Eddie Murphy shows up at the first dinner where the parents meet wearing a hat, not a dashiki, a kafta or something. A what?
Kufi, something like that.
Kufi or Kofi, right? Given to him by Louis Farrakhan, who was famously anti-Semitic.
Right.
And Julia Louis-Dreyfus makes a little comment. She's like, oh, him? But they never quite like go full into that. And I think the movie could have just like if you're gonna make this the joke of like these two religiously divergent families, and how they're trying to find common ground, but also have these differences, then like, let's go all the way into it.
Yeah. I mean, I understand what you're saying. I don't disagree that maybe it could have used a little more pushing the envelope here and there.
Right. Yeah.
But I'm not sure I need a heated discussion over Farrakhan's anti-Semitic views in the middle of this comedy.
No,
It's just
I
not
guess
that kind of movie.
true. Yeah. I'm not trying to say like, yeah. Okay. I think maybe if they had, it's, for me, that joke seemed a little subtle. Like you had to kind of know about Farrakhan and his history
That's true.
to get it. And it was something where they could have been a little bit more upfront with what the joke was supposed to be versus of like, oh, yes, I have studied Louis Farrakhan and his beliefs in the 70s during, blah, blah, blah. So I also think this movie, unfortunately, kind of fell into the same traps as the previous rom-com, where it just became a somewhat standard rom-com towards the end. Like it starts off with this two couple and they're trying to just be a couple with their very different families. It's sort of I think in my review on Letterboxd I wrote this was Meet the Parents for Millennials.
It was very similar to that.
Right. Yeah. Of like, Jonah Hills is trying to prove himself to Eddie Murphy, who does not approve of his daughter marrying a non-Nation of Islam white person whatsoever. And then, towards the end, there's the reconciliation and then they get married and happily ever after. And it just kind of fell into
Spoiler alert.
Well, it's a rom-com. I think when you say this is a rom-com, you know what you're going to get.
Sure.
Very rarely do rom-coms not end in the couple together and the reconciliation not happening.
Yeah, I thought maybe the only risk the movie took was with the cocaine stuff, where I was like, why is this in this movie?
Oh, yeah, where he's partying on his butt. I didn't realize that was his bachelor party at first.
Really?
I don't know if I wasn't paying attention or if the movie just didn't do a good job of it. I'm like, why are they in Vegas doing cocaine with Eddie Murphy?
They weren't even doing it. It was like he had done it in the past. And that gave the Eddie Murphy character like a reason to legitimately dislike him other than he's, his daughter's white fiance. And so, he leans in hard. Eddie Murphy's character leans in hard on like, he's untrustworthy. It's not that he's white. It's that he's untrustworthy type of thing.
But I thought
it just seemed like, I don't know. Maybe I just am an 80s kid and like people that do cocaine, I'm not saying they're untrustworthy, but like that's a major thing to me. Somebody who's recently done cocaine and sees no problem with it is not somebody I agree that I would want marrying my daughter. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it was kind of like, and then they kind of act like Eddie Murphy's character is leaning on that, but really he just doesn't like him because he's white.
Right.
And I'm like, you guys should have picked something different than cocaine.
Cocaine.
If you want me to buy that. Now, it's not like the movie fell apart. It's not that kind of movie. It was fine. But I was just like, this is a weird thing to put in this movie when I can think of like 100 other things that are not near as bad as cocaine that you could prove your point with to get to the same spot. And like, he's there. So like him and his friends can't do cocaine. You know what I mean? Like there was weird jokes about that. And it was like, he shouldn't be doing cocaine anyway. If he's about to marry your daughter, I'm on Eddie Murphy's side. I don't care what color he is. I don't want her marrying a guy who does cocaine, has no issue with it.
Right. It's just like, oh, it's a party. It's fine. No one ever wins an argument by saying it's just cocaine.
Right.
Right.
Like even pot. They could have done pot and then they could have had him make a big deal about him doing pot. And then they could be like, you do pot too, Dad. You know what I mean? That would have been like, I don't know if it would have been funnier, but it would have been, as an audience member, more acceptable of like, he's making a big deal out of nothing here. But it was cocaine.
And they do kind of do that whole thing with the brother and Eddie Murphy about how Eddie Murphy's being a hypocrite. Not with cocaine per se, but saying like, hey, when you were a kid, before you were known as Akbar, we called you whatever your, your non-Nation of Islam name was, you were fine about all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I also thought that the Eddie Murphy's wife, the mom character, or I mean, not his wife, but his character's wife. Like, she just seemed to be there to parrot what he had to say. Like, she had no personality to her whatsoever.
For sure. I mean, I think they knew that between Julia Louis-Dreyfus and Eddie Murphy, that those were the comedians.
Yeah.
And so the two significant others of those two characters were pretty much relegated to the back. Now, David Duchovny at least had a couple lines that I thought were funny, like weird non sequiturs and stuff like that.
Yeah, what was he obsessed with? He was obsessed with something throughout that movie.
I don't remember.
It was something from, like, was it hip hop from like the 90s or something like that?
He makes multiple comments that are kind of out of pocket, but
Yeah.
you could tell that he doesn't say them in the same way that Julia Louis-Dreyfus does. Like, they're both out of touch and like don't understand how to navigate these waters very
Right.
well.
Yeah.
But with David Duchovny, it's kind of forgiven because it's clear that he has no understanding of what's going on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's not trying to win points by trying to relate. Whereas Julia Louis-Dreyfus, you can tell it's very important to her to have these people like her. You know what I mean?
You're right.
Like, this is part of how she validates herself, is by being nice to everybody and making sure that she's doing the right thing, type of thing. Whereas David Duchovny just seems like a California surfer guy who, says what's on his mind.
Right. He's just there to hang out.
But the wife character to
Eddie Murphy.
I mean, I don't think she has a joke in the movie.
No, she just kind of backs up her husband throughout the entire movie.
Right. Yeah.
Like, she's not even one to be like, hey, honey, you're being a little intense here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she's as intense as he is.
Yeah, which is unfortunate. It could have used another interesting person in the mix, and instead they didn't make her that interesting.
Right. No, I think the movie would have worked better if you had these two, you had Eddie Murphy as the intense dad about this relationship, and then Julie Louis-Dreyfus as the intense mom about this relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And then their spouses being like, can we all just like cool our jets a little bit? Like, you guys are being a little crazy about this whole thing.
Yeah. And you could have gotten rid of the uncle, and like, the uncle was pointless. He could have not been in the movie. You could have given everything that uncle did and given him to the wife, or
right. Yep.
the parents across both couples. But I think overall, the movie rests again on the chemistry of the two leads, and I thought Jonah Hill and Lauren London.
Yeah, she was great.
We're good.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, that's another movie I'm not really going to think about long term. But I liked it better than I liked Your Place or Mine. I thought I had more pep, a little more zing, a little more relevance, despite the fact that they're both being released within weeks of each other. You People seemed far more the way people think nowadays. And not only just in the subject matter, just like the filmmaking style, the pace, the edginess of the jokes. They weren't that edgy, but at least they attempted to have an edge. Yeah, I enjoyed it. Kenya Barris. Has this person directed anything?
They created Blackish. Did you ever see that show?
I have seen a random episode here or there,
Okay.
but not really. I mean, I haven't really watched it or anything.
Megan and I watched several seasons of it. And Anthony Anderson and Tracy Ellis Ross they play the husband wife. They're both very funny in it. And then I don't know if you remember, in this movie, it's pretty short, but they're interviewing wedding planners. And Eddie Murphy brings Dion Cole as their wedding planner.
Sure.
That guy is in Blackish, and he is hilarious. Yeah, he works in the same office, and he just has like these crazy ideas throughout the entire, like, he's sort of one of the comedic foils of the whole show. But anytime I see him pop up in something now, I'm very excited because he cracks me up.
Nice. Kenya Barris, the director of You People, his next movie, according to Wikipedia, is a remake of The Wizard of Oz.
Interesting.
Yeah. Big Warner Brothers remake.
Do you think it is going to be like The Wiz, where he's going to do a mostly black cast?
I have no clue.
No
That's
clue
a good
either.
question. I don't know.
All right. Well, I'm always interested in what Kenya Barris is doing because I think he works with interesting people. So we shall see.
Cool. I'm into it. Well, I don't know. I'm not sure.
I don't know if I'm
I'm
into
not
it.
sure I need another Wizard of Oz, to be honest. No matter who's directing it. I think speaking of
intrigued.
Sam Raimi, I think Sam Raimi killed Wizard of Oz for me.
Did he make the
Oz the Great and Powerful?
right?
Yes.
Is that James Franco?
James Franco?
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
I listened to a podcast just today with Seth Rogen on the Tony Hawk podcast, which is an
Okay.
interesting pairing of people for sure. And he talked about most of his movies from that era. Never once said the name James Franco.
Yeah. Did they like professionally break up after the whole James Franco acting school scandal stuff?
Oh, I think Seth Rogen has definitely separated. I mean, they're definitely not working together anymore.
Right.
I
Yeah.
have no clue if they're friends behind the scenes, but I think it's very obvious that they are no longer in the same frat house, so to speak.
Yeah.
And even after that, like the Room movie that came out, the A24 movie about the making of The Room.
Yeah.
That came out like right as all that was happening, and that was, I think, the last time they were together in a movie. And that was like maybe 10 years ago now.
No, The Room's not that old, or not The Room, whatever it's called.
What is it
The
called?
Disaster Artist.
Disaster Artist was a while ago.
It's 10 years old.
Disaster Artist.
I want to say it's 5 years old.
2017.
Yeah.
Remember, 6 years old.
Pandemic feels like a decade happened. But
Sure.
The last 3 years have only been 3 years, James. Sorry to say.
I guess. Awesome. Anything else with you people?
That's all I got.
That's all I got too. Let's letterbox this. I said it was better than the last one, so I'm giving this one a 3.
Even though this was funnier than the last one, it kind of still hit similar beats. So I'm gonna stick by 2.5.
All right. A 3 and a 2.5 for you people. Thank you for listening to this episode 569 of the Cinereelists. We appreciate your listenership. Don't forget, find the video version on YouTube, subscribe there, support us on Patreon, patreon.com/Cinereelists. Leave us an Apple Podcast review or send us an email to heyguys@cinereelists.com. Those are all the things you should do. You could also find those things in the show notes, basically,
Yeah.
of this episode, if you didn't catch any of it. And you could also follow us on social media at Cinereelists on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or TikTok. You could follow me on my personal Letterboxd or Twitter account at YoJRB.
You can find me on Letterboxd at PeterSKB.
We'll be back next week, most likely talking Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. No guarantee. We still got some schedules to align and things like that. Might end up doing that not next week, but the week after. But maybe, possibly next week, Ant-Man and the Wasp Part 2.
We didn't even address the fact that Zach's not here. We just gloss right over that.
He's not here. I mean,
Yeah.
what's there to say? Zach is on a cruise, evidently.
A cruise he didn't tell us about until like midweek. He's like, oh yeah, by the way, I'm going to be gone.
Do you know where he's going? Is this a state secret, or are we allowed to say?
Well, he is going to the Bermuda Triangle, so there is a chance that Zach will never be back on this podcast. Last week
he did
may
tell
have
me
been.
about this.
Yeah, okay, he did tell you about Bermuda.
Yeah, I heard the Bermuda Triangle part. For some reason,
Okay.
I didn't soak in the I'm going on a cruise part.
He just thought he was like taking a boat to the Bermuda Triangle for fun.
I don't know. All I heard was I'm going to the Bermuda Triangle, and I just let it roll right by me.
Yes, he is.
No follow-up questions.
I mean, I don't think he's going specifically to the Bermuda Triangle, but I believe the boat is passing through the Bermuda Triangle. He's probably going to Bermuda, amongst other places.
Sure. So if next week happens and Zach's not back and we don't talk about him ever again, it's because he's disappeared off the face of the earth. He went to the Bermuda Triangle. Is that what happens when you go to the Bermuda Triangle? Do people forget you existed?
No. People remember you existed. They just don't know where you went.
Interesting.
And then 40 years later, aliens drop you off in the Gobi Desert.
I saw a really good low-budget movie where these people, like a couple young people, get into like a small airplane and they're flying somewhere to like hang out.
Okay.
Whatever. Super low budget. And on their way, they fly into the Bermuda Triangle and all this weird stuff happens while they're in flight. And it was good. And I can't remember the title of it.
Oh, you should.
I'd make a recommendation right now, but I can't remember the title of it.
All right, if you think of it, let me know.
There's like nobody in it too.
Well, I'm sure, yeah. It doesn't sound like a big budget. It's not Plane, is it?
No.
It's not Lost.
That's
You're not thinking of
recent.
Lost.
This is like maybe 10 years ago.
Oh,
maybe,
okay.
Maybe 7 years ago or 6. Pandemic time.
If you think it was 10 years ago, it's probably 6.
I think it was 10 or more, to be
Okay.
honest. All right, that's it. Thanks for listening. We'll see you guys next time. Until then, keep it Cinereal.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.